podcasts, and road trips. That's what's coming up on The Art of Bombing, episode 154.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. I'm Dan Bublich Jr. here with you on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. How are you doing today? How are you doing this week? Did you have a good week? Is the week off to a good start? Well, I sure hope it is. I hope you had a fantastic week, and I hope the upcoming week is fantastic as well. Today on the show, my guest is Will Isenberg. He's a fantastic comedian based in Madison, Wisconsin, and we had a great conversation. This is our second conversation that we had. The first conversation we had, I was not able to release because the audio just did not sound very good, and it was recorded with my phone, with the phone app that I no longer use, and we were able to chat with the new setup, and we had a great conversation. It was a very great conversation. We talked about intense road trips and being heckled by children, among many things. So that's what's going to be coming up on the show. I do want to mention, before we get into the conversation with Will, I will be playing a clip of his stand-up. Now, that is something I'm going to try to do with all future episodes going from here on forward, if available. If I'm able to get a clip from the comedians, I'm going to go ahead and put a little sample before the conversation. So you'll get a little taste of what the comic is like. And this is a great suggestion by Nathan Holtz. I'm going to give him a shout out. This was his idea. I've been meaning to do it, and I'm slowly getting there. And I've got the software and other things that I needed in order to download some of their stand-up. And, of course, all the stand-up that you're going to hear on the podcast is used with the comedian's permission. I'm not going to just go find whatever and use it. And I think that's going to do it, really, for announcements. Make sure you subscribe, like, rate, and review the podcast. Make sure, for everything else, go to theartofbombingpod.com to catch up on all episodes and to find some merch if you want. You know, if you want to support financially, you can also join us over on Patreon at patreon.com/artofbombingpod. And, of course, there is a Facebook page along with the Art of Bombing Pod Facebook group. All right, so that's a pretty quick intro because I don't really have anything to promote until later in the month. So here's here's some stand-up of Will, and then my conversation with Will. Enjoy.
I find that a lot of women won't date me because of feminism and also my face. The girls in my life are actually very supportive of me finding a girlfriend who's not them. Sort of like having my own cheerleader squad, right? They're like, ask her out, not that one. She's our friend, we care about her. By the way, fellas, the gals don't want to hear your comments on their bodies. Yeah, if you want to give a compliment to a girl, you've got to talk about something that she chose for herself. Like, hey, I like the way your earrings match your eyes. Hey, I like the way you styled your boobs this morning. A lot of guys complain about being friend-zoned. She thinks of me as a friend. Like, it's 2019, man. I could use a friend, actually. I'm in this great group of 5 friends, and each of those friends is in this smaller friend group of 4 without me. Yes. I didn't realize you could get last place in a friend group. I'm just trying to straighten out my life. You guys trying to straighten out your lives? Gay conversion therapy. Who's doing it? Straighten out your life. I am trying to eat healthier, though. Like, I'll substitute olive oil for butter, yogurt for sour cream. Did you know that if you mix up mashed up Oreos with fresh snow, it's almost like your parents are still together?
How have you been?
I've been good. It's certainly been an interesting 4 or 5 months now. I'm starting to really miss doing stand-up, but, you have to make the most of it, I suppose.
Yeah, this is very true, very true. It's something that none of us have ever had to experience, so it's all new for everybody, I suppose.
Yeah, it's probably the first major global event that both our parents and our grandparents and our generation have all gone through at the same time together. Yeah,
this is true. Yeah, definitely crazy times. I do appreciate you doing this again.
Yeah.
I did. I don't know, that app, when I first used it, it worked good. And then it just, I don't know if they didn't update it or what they did. It just went to shit. And the audio was just terrible. And
oh, man.
And I even sent it to a buddy of mine who is a professional sound engineer guy. And I was like, hey, can you do anything with this? I'll pay if I have to. And he took it and he was like, yeah, I don't think there's much I can do with this.
Oh, man.
I was like, well,
unsalvageable.
All right. Unsalvageable.
That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, well, that's what happens with technology. Thank goodness for do-overs.
Yeah. And really, nowadays, this is pretty much the only form of stand-up that we have.
Yeah, right. Well, the good thing is, though, it was so long ago, I don't remember what we talked about. So it's like having a fresh conversation.
Oh, that'll be good.
It's not like we're going to be, we're not going to lose the organic conversation because we're not trying to recapture what we talked about.
For sure, yeah. Just all spontaneity, all extempore, as it were.
Yep. You're in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, Madison, Wisconsin.
You're in Madison. Okay, I couldn't remember if you were in Madison or Milwaukee. I knew it was with an M.
Right. Yeah, but it's not a far drive from Milwaukee or Appleton, 2 hours up north, and so we're a good distance from a bunch of other cities that have lots of comedy opportunities.
Yeah. Well, does Madison have a comedy club?
Yeah, we have the Comedy Club on State Street.
Oh, okay. So Comedy on State.
Comedy on State, yeah.
Is that the name? That's okay. That's the name of that.
I think
club.
That's the official name, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, I couldn't remember. I was going to look, and I never did because I was in lacrosse last weekend for a little bit. And I was going to check out, after I got home, I was like, I wonder what they have for comedy because lacrosse is a lot bigger than I thought it was. Did they have anything over there that you know?
I don't think I've ever been to lacrosse, so I can't say about their scene. But yeah, Madison, the Comedy on State, they pull in a bunch of headliners every weekend from all over the country, big TV credits. So yeah, the Comedy on State is a really great spot to have. And just down the street from us, it's an amazing thing to have in your town.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always good to be close to a good club, I suppose. Do they do open mics and stuff there?
Yeah, so until the lockdown started, every Wednesday they would have an open mic, and it was a really professionally run open mic. It was pretty much like a real show, except with 20 comics each doing a 4-minute guest spot, and then they would also take the local comics from the scene and have them host each Wednesday to give them a hosting experience. And yeah, it was just a really great opportunity for a bunch of, beginner comics to get real club experience. And then, of course, if you do well at the Wednesday mic, then they let you host the Thursdays and eventually host the weekend shows. So yeah, it's been a great learning experience having that club available to us.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. That's a good deal. It's always good to have, like I said, to have a club close by. We've got quite a few here, but it's, obviously now it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
we're in the end times, so
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the end times of comedy when podcasts are the only thing that we have left.
Yeah, really, and I don't even know who's listening to these anymore. I know when I'm a big podcast guy. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, probably more podcasts than I do music. But I got laid off for a little while from my job, and when that happened, my podcast consumption went way down.
Because you
listen at work,
doing work, yeah.
Listen at work, listen to it when I was doing comedy, like on road trips. So, like, if I had a 5-6 hour drive, I would just load up my phone with podcasts and just listen all the way there and all the way back. But then all that stopped, and I was just at home, so I stopped. I still listen to a few podcasts, but not like I was. My consumption went way down. Then I got really far behind on all my podcast listening because I started watching more streaming shows versus listening to podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah, podcasts are a great way to spend time, whether at the office or on a road trip, like you mentioned, especially if it's, about a subject that you're already interested in, like comedy or one of the other ones out there.
No, a lot of true crime.
Yeah, true crime. Yeah, murder and comedy.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I listen to, murder and comedy.
Yeah.
Not all murder though. I listen to some true crime, but I listen to some true crime that's not always about murder. I listen to, sometimes there is murder in it, but it's more geared towards like heists and the mob and stuff like that. So
that's cool. Aggravated loitering, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. There we go. That needs to be a new true crime podcast. Aggravating loitering.
Second degree soliciting and littering and all that.
Just talks about guys who just stand in front of buildings.
Yeah.
Picked up.
Yeah. I got in a little bit of trouble for loitering. This was back before the pandemic. I suppose during the pandemic, loitering is a much more severe offense. No, I was just in a gas station because I just wanted to stretch my legs from the drive or whatever, and I wanted to. It was because I wanted to be in the AC, so it must have been last summer. And so I was just standing in the gas station, just being cooled off by the AC, and the gas station attendant whatever came over to me, and he asked me if I was looking for anything in particular, if I needed help. And he did that about 3 or 4 times. And by the end, she said, "Look, if you're not going to buy anything, you just need to leave." And I said, "Okay." Went back outside in the hot sun.
Oh, that's so mean.
So, yeah, that would be...
Yeah. I always feel weird about that, too, like, when you stop at a place like that, and not... Like, even to use the bathroom, you know what I mean? Like...
Oh, yeah, using the bathroom without buying anything.
Yep. I always feel like I have to buy something if I stop to use a bathroom on a road trip. So I, try to find something stupid to buy, something cheap or whatever. I'm just I gotta buy something. Yeah.
Yeah, just nothing off the rolling hot dog conveyor belt.
Yeah, well, sometimes, and then I regret it.
Yeah, and then it just sets off a chain of having to stop at other gas station restrooms.
Yeah.
That's how they get you. That's how they rope you in.
Yeah, that is exactly it too. That's definitely something you need to stay away from when you're on the road. Is the gas station food as much as you can, anyway.
Yeah.
You wait to get into gas station food until you're almost done with the road trip. When you're almost home, then it's okay, I'll be home soon. So
right, yeah.
Now it's safe. Oh yeah, I don't know. When I'm driving, I am I'm a hard driver as far as I only stop when I have to go to the bathroom and get gas, and I usually. If I don't need gas, I won't stop to go to the bathroom. I'm going to get gas, go to the bathroom, drive the next leg of this trip,
So you're very efficient about it.
Oh, I'm very gun-ho, too, about I got a place I want to be. I want to get there, you know. I don't.
Yeah. My dad is like that. He will, do an 8-hour road trip in 6 hours just if he's by himself. And he always likes to brag about how if he's doing it with the rest of our family, it takes several hours longer because we have to stop for bathroom breaks every 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's like, why can't everybody just go at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, the splendors of road tripping. What were those? I don't remember.
Well, one of the craziest solo road trips I did, it was right after the Paul Bunyan Festival where you and I first met. So this would have been April of last year. And I had to drive all the way home from Oscoda all the way below Lake Michigan to Madison. And it was a 10-hour drive. And because it was still in April, it snowed that day. So there's just slush on the highway. There were cars spinning out of control left and right. And I had to drive 10 hours through that to the way home. It was one of the most grueling drives I'd ever done. It was intense. Yeah.
When you add weather to a drive, it does. It makes
it's just completely. Yeah, no amount of podcasts can compensate for terrible weather.
No, I remember driving out to San Diego a few years ago, and I hit every kind of weather, it seemed like, that you possibly could. Like, there was a little bit of snow, and then I hit thunderstorm, and it was like a really bad thunderstorm, like so bad I ended up getting a hotel because I couldn't drive. It was at night, and it was coming down so hard that the wipers couldn't keep up, and that's when it snowed. I hit snow.
Right.
The rain hit me when I was going through Nevada. I just got through the mountains, and then it came down, and I had to stop for a while and let the rain pass. But it was crazy because I hit snow, I hit thunderstorm, then you get up into the mountains, and then it was like snow and rain plus all the curves and the weaving and everything in and out of the mountains and the up and down. And oh man, by the time I got to San Diego, I was wiped.
Oh, yeah. There's always that moment when you surrender and decide to get a hotel room. You just throw up your hands and admit that you're completely subject to the elements and that you're not able to fight through it anymore.
Well, so I didn't get as far as I wanted that first day. I ended up hitting the snow down in Nebraska. I think it was North Platte. So I got a hotel there. And at that time, I'd only been on the road for 6 hours. So I was like, oh man, I'm losing day. But I had no choice. I had to pull over. So then the next day, I hit it hard. And I drove from North Platte all the way just past Las Vegas. And then then I was just like, I can't drive anymore. And then I pulled into a casino and passed out in my car. Slept in my car for a few hours and then woke up and then finished my trip. Got to San Diego.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. But that's what you got to do when you're on the road comedy.
Oh, yeah. It's just a lot of travel. That's why I love doing, trips or tours with other comics because you can split gas, you can keep each other company, you can take turns driving, because I'm a nighttime driver. I love driving at night. I'm really alert at the nighttime, but I'm terrible driving in the afternoon. It's something about, 2 p.m., 3 p.m. time slot, and I just get super drowsy, super unable to focus. But if you have a friend who's, I was driving down to Chicago last year. It was one of my first Chicago paid shows. And so I left right after work ended, or I got out of work an hour too early. So it's about 3, 4 p.m. and I'm driving down there and I notice myself getting drowsy on the road. And then I blink and then suddenly the ridged edge of the highway is just screaming underneath my tires.
Oh, yeah.
And that woke me up, and I was super alert the rest of the drive. My heart was pounding, just adrenaline pumping everywhere. So, yeah, that's one way to stay awake is almost drift off the highway.
Yeah, right? Well, good thing you woke up in time to there's some people that drift off and then literally drift off the highway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was so
dangerous.
thankful for that ridge, because they just dig the cuts into the asphalt and it's super loud.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. That's safety stuff. They do that in the middle of the road sometimes too.
Right.
And that goes for state to state. So if you start swerving into the other lane, it'll start making a ton of noise, hit that asphalt.
Yeah, that's good.
So
do they have those everywhere, or is that just in some states?
No, I think it goes state to state because when I lived in South Dakota, there's not a lot of, not in the middle of the road anyway. They do have, a lot of times they do have them on the, the shoulder to prevent you from going off the road into the ditch, but not many have it in the middle of the road that I can think of anyway.
Yeah.
But here in Minnesota, where I'm at now, they do. Most highways have them in the middle.
Right.
Too. But, yeah. I used to have trouble being drowsy on the road until I found out it ended up being because I was diabetic and I didn't know it. But I struggled. Oh, man, I struggled driving. Even, it could be, early, it was tough, trying to stay awake. Even early afternoon, what you were talking about, I would have a hell of a time trying to stay awake because I was just always fatigued. And then turned out I was diabetic, and then once I got that all straightened out a little bit, no issues. Falling asleep while I was driving.
Right, yeah. Wow, that's got to be crazy, going that long without understanding what it's caused by.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there was a lot of other issues that stemmed from being diabetic, too, that a lot of other issues I was having that I didn't realize was all tied into that.
Right.
But I remember years ago, I worked for this company, and I would get a ride with this guy, and we worked 12-hour shifts. And I remember one time I wasn't paying attention because I was just a passenger, but he dozed off and ended up rear-ending somebody.
Whoa.
Because I wasn't paying attention, and I was just we weren't going super fast, but it was enough that, I was just kind of off and la. Next thing you know, we were starting to get to I was like, hey, and then by the time he came to, it was too late.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, nobody got hurt, and there wasn't a lot of damage on the cars either.
That's good. That's good. So sometimes you'll see those prank videos of people driving in a car on the highway, and they're behind a vehicle that either it's a large truck that's carrying cars behind it or whatever, but something about the back makes it look like the front of another vehicle. So it looks like there's a car in front of you. And then there'll be one person in the passenger seat asleep, and then everyone counts to 3 and then starts screaming for their lives. And he wakes up, sees that there's an oncoming vehicle, presumably in this lane, and grabs the steering wheel, and they crash or whatever. It's wonderful.
I used to do something similar to that to my friends when we'd be going on trips and they'd fall asleep. They'd doze off, or even we're coming home from the bar or whatever. Somebody started to pass out. I would wait till I was turning, for a turn. And then as I was turning, I would just scream and go, ah! And they'd wake up, and all they saw is we were swerving. They didn't, and they'd scream and freak out. They're like, oh my God, they freaking grab the thing, and then they come to, and they're like, oh man, that, they realize then that, I was just turning, but it was so funny. Freak them out like that.
Yeah.
All the pranks, the good times. Those were my younger days, though.
Yeah.
All back before comedy. Speaking of comedy, let's talk about bombing. And go ahead and tell a story about a time where you felt like you did not do well or that you bombed.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bunch of those types of experiences. For me, the worst ones aren't so much a time when people don't laugh, because I feel like that's a fairly neutral experience. You tell your joke, no one laughs, whatever. You'll do better next time. But the one that really stuck out in my mind, I remember just because it was so absolutely insane. It was one of those shows that you just could not comprehend what was going on. And so I was having dinner with a friend, and I get this last-minute text from another comic saying, hey, we have a local show, and I need to fill a spot. can I have you as an opener? And I said, yeah, sure. And so my friend and I both go over to the venue because I figure, why not just do this show? And the show was at a CBD lounge, like a place where you just go and get CBD oil infused stuff. Yeah, and it was for the whole family, because unlike a dispensary, it wasn't age restricted, and so you had parents and their little toddlers running around in this place. And so we get there, and the opening act is either bad improv or bad sketch comedy, and I couldn't tell if they were doing it on purpose or if they planned it out or not. It was just two people on a stage running around in circles, having some sort of dialogue. It made zero sense. And because I'm the opening stand-up comic, I have to go after this. And so I'm thinking, what on earth could I possibly say that will get the crowd back from this chaos that's going on right now? And so that opening bit is over, and the host calls me up. And so I go up, I start doing my jokes, and the crowd, it's an unusual venue for sure, but the crowd's not that bad. They're laughing, they're paying attention, they're going along with all of it. And then, so one of the women who did that opening sketch segment, her daughter, 3 or 4-year-old daughter, is also in the crowd with the rest of their family. It's, family CBD outing or whatever. And so this 4-year-old is just kind of running around the audience as I'm trying to tell my jokes. And she's also wearing these metallic tap shoes. So she's clacking around on the tile floor as I'm trying to tell my jokes to this CBD lounge. And at one point, the girl just walks up on stage next to me and starts tap dancing while I'm in the middle of a joke. And I'm so floored by what's going on that I'm thinking, should I ignore it? Should I address it? Should I escort her off stage? Should I try to do crowd work with this 4-year-old? And so I kind of bring her into the whole bit. I ask her, what do you do for a living besides ruin other people's stand-up sets? And she's tap dancing. And then at some point she starts calling me poopy in front of everyone. She says, "You're poopy."
Okay, so was she getting laughs? Was the crowd laughing at her calling you?
I mean, the crowd was laughing at someone, either one of the two of us. It was like the show was not going as I'd planned at all, but the crowd were certainly enjoying themselves. And so
they were getting entertained.
Right, yeah. And the whole time I kept expecting the mom of the girl to come and, maybe guide her daughter on the straight and narrow path. But no, she just sort of let the whole thing unfold. And so the 4-year-old is calling me poopy, and then I'm saying, "No, I'm not. I'm very clean." And we go back, "Poopy, no, clean. Poopy, no, clean." And then one time I try to hit her with a curveball, and I say poopy, hoping that she'll do the Looney Tunes thing and say, "No, clean," and then I would get her. But she was she was only 4 years old, so she did not understand the reference from the 50s.
She did not get it.
She didn't get that we were Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck.
That's great. I had a similar experience.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I was performing at a birthday party for somebody, and it was a surprise birthday party. And they I don't know if you know this, but you muted your mic. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I saw it come up on the thing.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Anyway, but like there was a bunch of kids there, and when the comedy portion started, no parenting stopped. Like, they were like, we don't care. And the kids, like, we're supposed to be entertaining the adults, and the kids are just running rampant. And I remember there was a girl, she was, I don't know, I suppose I would say anywhere between maybe 7 and 10 years old. But she was, like, hiding under the table. There was a bunch of kids sitting under a table kind of watching the show, and then she started heckling me. And man, it's so bad.
Yeah, kids heckling you is the worst, because if an adult heckles, if an adult heckles you, the audience is kind of already on your side, and so you can say whatever you want to shut the drunk guy down, and everyone will applaud for you. A lot of times hecklers are a great way to just make yourself look more spontaneous or in the moment. They can really help you win over the crowd. But if it's a kid, you don't know how mean you're allowed to be, how adult you're allowed to be with your response. Because a number of responses to hecklers are not appropriate to say to a child. You get yourself canceled or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But so kids who just feel that they can do or say whatever, and then suddenly it goes from a fun, offbeat audience interaction to just you are the babysitter and the parent all at once, and you have to do the damage control for this out of whack kid.
And then if you're not, and like you said, you got to be careful how you handle it too, because if you say the wrong thing, or even if you're a little too mean, then you totally lose the whole audience, because they're on the kids' side, because they think, oh, this is cute.
Oh, yeah.
The little kid's getting to be part of the show. This is going to be fun. And then if you're like, hey, sit down and shut up, and then they're like, whoa, that was not
nice. If a grown-up hits you or whatever, you're allowed to and expected to hit back. But if a kid kicks you in the shin, no matter how much it hurts, you're not allowed to get anywhere near them. You just have to take it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Gotta take them licks.
Right. There was one of my comedy friends in Madison. Madison's still closed for comedy. They must have been doing some show somewhere. And they were interacting with parents and then a young baby. And they made some sort of comment like, yikes, while looking at the baby, implying that there was something wrong with the baby. And then maybe the next day there was a huge argument that broke out over Facebook. People, criticizing this comic for for like body shaming the baby or whatever.
Oh
it's crazy. Or and a lot of times people who are not already bookers of shows, they might hire a comic for their private event or for their business function or whatever. A lot of people are under the impression that comedy automatically makes an event better. And that's not always the case. I mean, your music show doesn't need to have a comedian open for it. People just want to hear the music. If you're having some sort of a talent show or this or that, you don't automatically need it to be funny or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you don't even need entertainment at your event. Like I did performed at a fundraiser, and honestly, they did not need entertainment. The people there weren't really paying attention anyway, because there were so many other things going on. They had like a silent auction going on, and I'd never seen so many items at a silent auction in my life. And it was just like it was like a ballroom just full of tables with items to bid on, because it was a fundraiser for somebody. And, while I was performing, people were walking around bidding on items. There's like pool tables set up next to the dance floor, and the dance floor is where I was performing at. So people are playing pool. The bar was behind me. There was a buffet for food behind me. So people are like getting food, getting drinks, playing pool. There's a few tables at the front that are kind of paying attention. Sound system not set up for this ballroom either. That's the other thing. It's like people in the back could barely hear me. And that was another situation where there was kids. Next thing I know, I got kids like running circles around me while I'm trying to perform. And then I tried making jokes about that and like having my own orbit and things like that, making a fat joke or whatever. And the crowd just was not, just not happening. But when it was all said and done, that was an event where they could have went without entertainment. The same amount of people would have came, and they would have made the same amount of money. Nobody came out of their way because they hired a comedian. They came for the food. They came for the silent auction. They came to hang out and drink. They did not care what Dan Bublitz had to say that day.
They didn't care about your hot take about dating or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my first couple months in doing comedy in Madison, I went to a show. It was put on at a nearby restaurant or bar, which typically has music and comedy events. So that was fine. But the night that they chose to have that comedy show, there was also a retirement party going on in the same venue. It was just a complete double booking. And so the buffet table happened to be right directly in front of the stage. So it, almost like it was part of the stage itself. There was just a comedian and then a buffet spread with shrimp cocktails and crudités. And then there was, Bob Richardson celebrating 40 years at whatever law firm. And so the comedians, bless their hearts, they're doing the best they can to tell jokes. This one time I, went to a bar and it was crazy. And then people are just eating, tipping food and pretzels, eating it. At one point, one of the ladies getting food feels bad for the comic on stage and just straight up offers him a plate of food.
Oh my gosh.
Like we have crackers, we have salami, we have cheese cubes, and he took it, and he kept telling jokes in between mouthfuls.
That's great.
Carrots and hummus.
I feel like you have to take it. It's like,
at that point,
you're not going to give me your laughs and your attention. I just will take your food.
Yeah, there comes a point when you're bombing where the show becomes so bad that you kind of enter a no man's land and you're allowed to pretty much do whatever you want because it'll be entertaining for you. Other people might not like it or might not understand it, but it can be very funny for you. One of my friends, it was another bar show, and the show was going all right, but they had a couple drunk hecklers kind of mouthing off during people's bits. And so my friend was on stage, and he says some rhetorical question like, hey, you ever know how whatever? And then some drunk lady says, yeah, I do all the time. And then he kept going with his bit, but she thought that she was going to have a conversation with him about it from the bar area. And so when she gets frustrated that he's ignoring her, she actually walks through the tables up on stage with him. And this guy, he was quick as a whip because he immediately adapted and made it part of his bit as if he was doing like a sketch. Yeah. He was like, all right, drunken, middle-aged Janet over there and I are going to be singing a rendition of Summer Nights. I'll be John Travolta and she'll be Olivia Newton-John. And then he just starts singing Summer Nights. Da, 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 da. It was so great.
Did she join in though?
No, she was too drunk to understand that he was making fun of her.
Yeah.
I mean, if she had gone for it, that would have been great. It would have saved the whole night. But yeah, there was a moment when it seemed like, wait, did he plan this? Because it seemed to be so natural for the first 10 seconds. And then, of course, that stalling gave the bar, the bouncer enough time to go on stage and, carry her away.
Yeah.
But I just love it when...
Oh, go ahead.
I just love it when comics take advantage of insane situations like that and make them even more absurd on their own terms.
Yeah, well, you almost have to. I mean, but that brings me to a great, I'm curious, what do you think, or for you at least, what's your threshold? What is the threshold that you have to reach where you're like, well, there ain't nothing I can do to win this crowd, so I'm just going to do whatever? Because it's funny because there's comics that no matter how bad a set is going, they'll just keep pushing through, and you have to try to push through your time. But at what point, as you're pushing through, are you just like, well, I got to do something to have fun for at least me, and I don't care.
Right. I think it's a combination of you being maybe because if it's a club lineup or whatever, and they're expecting all the comics to do their time, and if the crowd has been great for the first couple comics, I would want to just stick to my time, even if I was not going to do a lot of laughs. I mean, just stick to your time, get out of there, and hopefully the next comic will be able to resurrect it. But if it's
definitely situational,
right? Yeah. I think whether or not I'm being paid to be on this show actually factors in a lot to how much I will be willing to, stick it out for the show. Like if someone's paying me, I consider it, a professional gig, and I'll do what they want me to do. If they want 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'll do exactly what I came for. But if it's a show where they just said, hey, come on, do our show, and no one's really getting paid, and if no one paid to be at that show, I'd feel a lot more comfortable going crazy because it's not like anyone has invested any money in this,
Yep. No, and that's a very good perspective, because you really do have to keep it professional,
right.
And that really, and it really determines, what kind of show it is, if you're getting paid, if they paid, all those are good factors and to keep in mind in a situation like that. But then there's sometimes, even in those situations where there's you can't do nothing. It's just like you said, like I've seen that too, where a drunk lady will just come up on stage and the comics just like, because unfortunately a lot of comedy clubs don't have good security,
Yeah, which is weird because you'd think that those places would be the most, risky for crazy people. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when, a lot of comedy kind of revolves around people expressing their thoughts and opinions.
Yeah. And a lot of comedy is about pushing buttons and, going in certain directions that might make some people uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. And then not having security, crazy stuff happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And as a comic, you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to entertain. I can't, drop the mic and throw down,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it happens, and there have been situations where comics had to defend themselves when they were,
there was a video. I think this went around last year sometime. It was a Milwaukee comic who he'd had a reputation for being kind of a sleazebag anyway. He'd been accused of some stuff. Some not so great stuff. And I don't know if he put up this video, trying to get himself more attention, or if someone else put it up. But basically he went up on stage and did this. It was just a really bad set about, hey, how at Starbucks sometimes their drinks are named whatever. It was very bad. No one was laughing. No one was paying attention. And then he starts getting really belligerent for some reason. Just started screaming at the audience, calling them all sorts of slurs. And then a bouncer gets on stage trying to escort him off. This performer grabs a chair and starts wielding the chair around at the bouncer. And you can hear in the video, everyone's voices, everyone goes, oh, all at once. Because at that point, it's, becoming a physical threat.
Yeah, but that's different, though, because that's not where, an audience member is coming up and attacking you for
that's true.
A joke that they didn't agree with. You know what I mean?
Right. It's the comic themselves being crazy.
He put himself in that situation where he just turned into a because at that point the business has to do something, because they're at risk of losing business, because if he chases people out,
Right.
But but that's pretty ballsy to do. It's so disrespectful too.
Oh, it's so disrespectful. Yeah. So he must have either been on some substance, or he's just the sort of person who does not care what other people think of him and doesn't care who he hurts or makes uncomfortable.
Yeah. And he probably thought that was funny too, cheer up.
Yeah. Or and sometimes you get the feeling that, you see a lot with prank culture, where as long as you get views and get people to react, it sort of justifies whatever you do to innocent bystanders.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's so true, especially in our society these days.
Yeah, everything is viral. A lot of your online presence is judged on how quickly you can get people to know who you are and react to you.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this, how, some of these people that, do the shit that they do, like going into a store without a mask and then throwing a tantrum and they go viral.
Yeah.
I often think they do it on purpose, just in the hopes that they'll be in a viral video, just to like to feed some weird narcissistic, tendency of their, it's just weird to get their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. They think that they'll go viral and then people will move on to the next thing, and a lot of times they might not. Funny. Well, they think it'll be funny, this person goes crazy at a Walmart, and then they don't fully comprehend the risks of, maybe I will lose my job or get arrested or this or that. Yeah,
and people won't think it's actually funny.
Yeah.
They'll just think I'm being an asshole.
So many of these either comics doing crazy stuff on stage, or whatever, it's like they don't comprehend that they're failing at the most basic tenet of comedy, which is to make people laugh. Yeah, they think that the stage is just a platform to do stuff on, and people are forced to watch you.
They want to do performance art and call it comedy, and that doesn't always work because, I mean, like you said it, at the end of the day, comedy is about making people laugh, and if they're not laughing, then you're not performing comedy to the degree that it should be.
You're not doing your job.
Yeah, definitely not doing your job. How long does the bumming and bombing last for you?
It depends on the stakes of the show, So if it's a really important show, or the one that I've been trying to get on for a long time, or one that potentially had a lot of opportunities that could come from it, and if I do poorly at that, it'll probably sit with me for a while. Especially you have a long drive home or whatever, you drive an hour or two to do this gig, and all the other comics got great laughs and connected with the audience and had great moments of spontaneity or dealing with hecklers, and then you go up there and do your routine and none of it lands. And it could certainly make for a very lonely drive home.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very similar. For me, it's very situational now. Like I'm harder on myself for, especially if it's a paying gig and I don't do good. But like
if it's a paying gig,
I can care less about that.
Oh yeah, there was a very definite threshold that I crossed, probably a year into doing comedy. Well, when I started getting actual booked gigs, that suddenly open mics just did not really faze me that much anymore. You do well, you bomb, you do something goofy or not. And since it's just an open mic and you've done other gigs, it really doesn't matter to you. And then once you start doing a lot of paid gigs, suddenly the unpaid gigs don't really matter that much to you anymore. So I think it's, just staircase levels, and each platform you get to, all the stuff that's behind you doesn't really rattle you that much.
Yeah. How do you analyze your sets? When you do, do you listen back to your sets or watch videos, and then how do you know what isn't working and what is?
Yeah, I make it a point to audio record every open mic and then video record every booked gig. That's sort of how I worked it out, and then most of the files I'll eventually delete after a while. But yeah, I do make it a point to listen through all the recordings, especially if I was trying out a newer bit or a new combination of jokes. A lot of times I can tell just while I'm in the moment up there. I can tell if the bit's working or not. And when I get off stage, I can remember every beat pretty well with how it landed with the audience. But it's also good to listen to it just to see if there's any anything that I missed the first time. And a lot of times your recordings can actually be informative in a surprising way. You think you bombed, but then you listen to the recording and you realize, actually I got pretty decent chuckles the whole way through. I never really lost them. Or you think you crushed, and then you listen to the recording and you think, maybe they laughed hard at a couple of those jokes, but it wasn't the whole, billowing stream of laughter that I had imagined it while I was doing it.
Yeah, I've had that happen quite a few times. Like that's where I've felt like I bombed really hard, and I don't always listen to my sets either, as not as much as I should, and then I'll finally push myself to listen to it, and then I'm like, that actually wasn't as bad. It wasn't a great set, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was, because I am getting pretty good laughs, and for whatever reason, just depending on acoustics and the sound system, you don't always hear the laughter, and when you're on stage, it just looks like people aren't really into the show, and then you hear that recording and it's like, actually they really were.
Yeah, I found it very useful to, if you can, have your recording device as far away from you as possible, because that will pick up a completely different angle and a different vantage point of the room. Because if you're up front, you'll be hearing what the people up front are doing, but then if you get that recording from the back of the room, it's just extra information that you have. Like a lot of comics laughed at this one, but a lot of regular people didn't. Or sometimes a joke will turn out to have gone really well, and you can tell that because the back of the room recording, the entire bar fell silent to listen to your joke. Before they're laughing and chatting, and then you do the joke, and then they go quiet, and you realize, oh wow, this joke actually got them to pay attention. That's really cool.
Yep, that's a good point. I'm the same like that too, where I try to. I don't always bring my phone up on stage to record. I try to leave it, if I can, leave it somewhere either in the back or off to the side of the stage. But not like up front or up there, but, just depends on the room and whether or not somebody could walk off with my phone. That's always my biggest, is if I leave it somewhere, then somebody just like walks off with it.
Yeah.
So bad. How do you find your material? What kind of stuff do you like to write about, or how do you get inspired?
Hanging out with other comics is a great opportunity because you're joking around, they're joking around. You come up with a cool one-liner, or they come up with a line, and you think to yourself, I bet I can improve on that, or use that to branch off to something else. And so, just conversations with comics, even conversations with regular people. You're at the office space or whatever, and you're joking around with them, and there's a much lower bar for making your non-comedy friends laugh than your comic friends. But sometimes you get fun ideas just from joking around at the office or with your roommates or whatever. Or you read news articles and you think of a one-liner for there. I found that Twitter and the Reddit stand-up shots forum are a really cool place to try out things like one-liners and stuff. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they save you the expense of having to go to the open mic and say it out loud. If you get a good reaction on social media, oftentimes that's something you can work into a bit. And a lot of times, especially if you've been working on a certain bit for a while, a lot of the material for that bit will just come up spontaneously while you're doing that in different mics or even shows. You do something at a show, and one day you do an extra tag spontaneously, and it works. And so you think, I'll just keep it in here and keep doing it that way. So a lot of these bits just evolve over time, doing them in different venues.
Yeah. That's a good point too about using like Reddit and social media to test like little jokes. That can also be very disheartening though too, because there's a lot of people on social media that will just like tear you down if they can.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've seen that on Reddit a lot, actually.
Reddit can be vicious, but also it's a lot of times if I'm writing a one-liner, especially, I'll quickly, if the idea pops to my head, I'll quickly Google that one-liner just to make sure that no one else has thought of it, that I'm not subconsciously plagiarizing it from someone else, because a story or a bit, it's harder to come up with at the same time as someone else does. But, sometimes you'll think of a one-liner verbatim, only to realize that someone tweeted it a couple of years ago. Or one time I was at the local club, and one of my bits involved a tagline about being homeless, and the punchline was "no hobo," like a play on "no homo." And I did the whole bit, but I forgot to put that tag in there with the "no hobo" line. And then the very next comedian to go up had a joke where the punchline was "no hobo." And I'd never seen him before. He'd never seen me before. We just both happened to write out that same tag, which is kind of an obvious tag once you think about the, premise and whatever. But, he went right up right after me, and he used that line, and the line crushed. I was flattered to think that, the line would have worked for me too. But sometimes, or especially if, current events or whatever, you'll tweet the same joke as 3 of your other comedy friends do.
Yeah. And another resource that I use for that when I think of something and I'm like, man, I wonder if this is a joke already, is I'll go to jokes.com. Which is, I think it's like a, if it's still, I'm pretty sure it still exists, but it's like an offshoot site from Comedy Central, but like you can Google, or you can search keywords and it'll bring up a bunch of jokes that have, what the hell? I said, "Oh, my Google popped up on my phone when I started talking about Google."
Uh-oh. Oh, man.
Right now, it's like, whoa, that's scary. But anyway, but you can search keywords and it'll bring jokes with those, So, like, if you think of a one-liner, you can type in that one-liner and then it'll pull up. And it's not always the same, Yeah. It'll be like a text of a little paragraph or whatever the joke is, and who did the joke and whatever. Yeah. So it's a good little resource for that. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's very helpful.
All right. Well, we're gonna get wrapped up. A couple more things before I let you go. Enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. I like to change it up and go with some fun stuff at the end. So the first thing is, do you have a pre-show ritual or tradition? Something you do before every show?
I kind of have a couple things that I do before a show. I have a certain set of songs that I'll listen to, driving towards a show, kind of get me in the mood or develop, a familiar mental routine.
What kind of songs do you have on there? I'm curious what a comedian's pre-show playlist is.
I mean, I cannot imagine that any other comedian would have the same list, but I'm kind of into Broadway show tunes a bit, and so a lot of the songs that I like to listen to before a show come from the Broadway musical Pippin.
Okay, I can see. Very uplifting or upbeat music.
Yeah. So sort of upbeat, rousing. And one of the intro songs has a couple measures where it sounds like opera instruments warming up, so the strings going through their 5 chords or whatever. So it feels like the beginning of a theatrical event. And so, that gets me in the mood on the drive there. I'll usually try to get to a venue, especially if it's a new place, maybe 15, 20 minutes early just to feel out the place, introduce myself to the comics. I'll typically, if I have time, I'll kind of do a survey of the room and see if there are any individuals that I might want to, do crowd work with later in my bit. If I notice a guy with a really distinct shirt, a Hawaiian shirt or a T-shirt, or maybe, really interesting pair of shoes or whatever, or just anything, any visual cues that I can look at, if they have a weird mustache or a crazy hairdo. And then I'll, typically write a couple potential roast jokes and just have them with my notes. Because, if you're able to whip one out suddenly in the middle of your set, it makes it look like it's completely off the cuff, completely spontaneous. And and the crowd loves that. Even the shows that I've been bombing, if you can do a really good roast of someone, it immediately pulls everyone into the moment, and it makes it seem, just less scripted, less wooden, a lot more fluid. And so, getting to know your enemy, that sort of stuff. And then, like right before I go up on stage, if I can find any private corner that no one is watching me, I'll try to crank out like 30 or 40 or 50 push-ups if I can, just to sort of get my blood pumping, just to sort of get the adrenaline going. I like going on stage, just with feeling that sort of tightness in your arms and chests helps sort of get me in the mood for, being in comedy. And it helps you be a bit more explosive and energetic on stage if you know that you've just done a bunch of exercise or whatever.
That's quite the pregame.
Yeah, it's
Joe tunes to savage push-ups.
Yeah, and then with the music, especially, I have a post-show ritual, and I have 2 very different playlists depending on how the show went. So if the show went well, I have a bunch of music to get me in the zone, or I'm feeling the post-show glaze or whatever. And if the show went poorly, then I'll have my sad music to sort of be cathartic too.
just to add to it. The dramatic effect of being
right.
sad.
If you're going to be sad, it might as well be like sad with a capital S,
If you're going to go all the way.
Right. If you're going to wallow.
That's so funny. What's been your best or favorite gig so far?
So one of my favorite gigs, I mean, you always have your first open mic, your first paid gig, your first gig at this club or that club. One of the gigs that went really well for me. It was actually the last show I did before the lockdown. So it was March 11th, and the lockdown started March 13th. And I really appreciated the chance to end on a really high note, because it was a bar show, but it was a packed audience, packed paying audience. And I had one of the slots towards the end, and so while I was on stage, the crowd was already loosened up and they were ready to laugh at a bunch of stuff. And I just did I felt comfortable doing a lot of new stuff in the show that worked the first time that I said it. Just like goofy. I sang a song about coronavirus because it was like everyone was talking about it that week. It was just the lockdown hadn't happened yet. So it was on everyone's mind. So I sang a goofy little song about it, which people liked. And then after the show ended, I was having just a bunch of great interactions with audience members. And I realized that, not only did I have a good show, but a lot of these people just also want to hang out with me as a person. And so that felt really cool. I felt that I'd really connected with the audience. A bunch of them were offering to buy me drinks. A bunch of them were, giving me, business cards saying, "Hey, I have an office down in Chicago and we'd love for you to come perform at our brunch. If you can rile up a couple of your comic friends and come perform for us." And so I was getting offers for a bunch of corporate gigs and stuff.
That's awesome.
Down in Chicago. And as it was certainly disheartening to lose all that as soon as the lockdown started, but I'd much rather end on that note than end, a year ago, 2 years ago, when I hadn't really accomplished enough to,
I feel bad for all the comics who had that last show that wasn't good.
Oof, yeah. Or a last spell of shows or something. But there are a good number of comics in the Madison scene who seem to be doing really well right before everything broke. But a bunch of my friends were getting solid gigs in Chicago. A lot of them were starting to tour, like do legit stuff at the local club. And so, but just, suddenly.
Oh, I feel their pain. I had a lot of stuff lined up.
Oh, yeah.
So I can definitely feel their pain.
Suddenly it's just all gone with the wind.
Yeah. And then what really sucked about it is that, like, every place was kind of, because it went, it was different from state to state. Right. So everybody was kind of playing it by ear. So it was like a trickle effect. Like, couple gigs you lose, and then your stuff that's out there, you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm out for a couple weeks. And then get closer to those gigs, and it's like, well, now we got to cancel, until finally it just trickled and everything got cleared. And it's just like, if it would have just been all at once, where it's like, all right, we're just done. Okay. Yeah. They had to live it over and over again until finally your calendar was empty.
Oh yeah. But I found good things to, apply my creative interest towards during the lockdown. So a number of my comic friends and I, we would start doing either skits or videos or things that you could easily do virtually or distance. We all film our own clips in our own rooms and then send them to one person. They edit them and make it look like it's one contiguous thing. So that's been a very fun new thing that some of us have done. Or I just also gotten more into creative writing, writing short stories and stuff, not necessarily comedy, but things that still require you to think about things and invent and create. And so, it could be a long time before stand-up comes back, especially in the way that it used to be. Yeah, just because bars are such an at-risk area and stuff.
Yeah. In some areas there is comedy kind of coming back, but the problem is there's not enough of it coming back compared to how many comedians there are,
right.
Ones that are going to be coming back, the bigger headliners that we're doing theaters are going to start working them clubs. And so won't be as much stage time to go around, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that is unfortunate, but some things are just unavoidable.
Yep, you just get there's not much we can do about it.
Actually, I take that back. Plenty of countries avoided this because they did a number of things differently. And
fair enough. Well, the last thing I like to do, I like to play a game called Pick a Number. You're going to pick a number between 1 and 20, and then I'm going to ask you a corresponding question.
Oh, okay. Well, I always like to pick number 14 in these situations, so we'll go with 14.
All right. So, number 14. And this is actually a popular question. I've asked this multiple times.
A lot of people like 14.
Do you ever stop and think about the number of butts in the world?
I can honestly say that I have never had that thought cross through my mind. I assume it's roughly the same number as the number of people in the world. I guess
Probably.
If you count decomposing bodies, there might be more posteriors than there are living humans. And if you...
but you would have to count animals have butts.
Oh, yeah, okay. But then what is a butt? I mean, some insects have a thorax and an abdomen. I mean, like a worm, does a worm have a rear end?
Yeah. Are we counting? And then you got to think, too, are we counting people who are actually asses?
In the metaphorical sense of the term. Yeah, I suppose there's a whole.
Yeah, they're kind of butts too.
Could one? If there's a pregnant lady who is very unsurly, could she count for 3?
Oh,
1, 2, 3.
Yep.
I feel like you could make a case for a lot of those.
Oh yeah, it sounds like we're getting to infinite butts.
The theory of infinite rear engine.
Oh man! Well, where can people find you? Go ahead and plug your social media. And
I tweet at Isentrigger. That's Eisen Trigger. I Instagram at will.isenberg. I blog at icebergkings.com. I write short stories and post them there. And yeah, that's pretty much, I suppose you could review me on Yelp if you wanted to, but I don't think a lot of people do that so far.
That'd be an interesting thing to get a Yelp review for.
That would be, yeah. Yeah. 1 out of 5 stars. His show gave me COVID.
Yeah, especially now. That'd be bad. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Will.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on, Dan.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitz Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week, and remember, stay safe so you can live to love.